That's very interesting. I think that's a really interesting idea. What would you say that people who, work in a corporation, they have a 401k that's invested in maybe Fidelity or, Vanguard, one of these, but they're not really in charge. Like they can't directly go to the fund manager and say, well, I would rather not have my money in China. What could people do?
Look, I think actually they can. I think it may seem as though you're just one person in a large corporation with vastly more money than you personally have in their pension fund. But if you sign, for example, this directive and send it to your financial manager, the pension fund manager, and you go to I don't know, your shop steward if you're in a manufacturing facility and therefore have a special interest in not having the Chinese hollow it out, or any other kind of corporate entity, your colleagues, your for that matter, other family members who are going to be beneficiaries of this pension fund, perhaps. Get them engaged and look. The simple truth of the matter is this won't stand the light of day. If we can do nothing else, but get people focused on talking about and, raising hell about what is being done with their money, without their permission, without, in many cases, their knowledge, I think you're going to start seeing people, at a minimum, being offered an alternative, an ex-China alternative, as they say. Will it be as remunerative? I don't know. My guess is it probably will, especially with what's going on in China at the moment, with bubbles bursting in their real estate market and the shenanigans of the government with respect to their some of their favored corporate entities and an awful lot of other problems, which again you guys do a superb job of chronicling. It's a better bet, I think, to bet on the United States than on the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, to your point, Frank, back in the 80s, there was a campaign to divest in South Africa because people didn't like apartheid, and to a large degree, that divest campaign took money out of the hands of the apartheid government there and led to a major change in that system and the leadership of Nelson Mandela. And so obviously South Africa is a small country. I mean, Americans are more willing to divest from a small country than from a giant country that controls so much. But, there are people who are doing it. I mean,
I don't think we're less willing. I just think it's harder.
It's harder. But, we had on the podcast before Perth Toll, has what's called the Freedom Index, FRDM, and that is
it's an ETF.
It's an ETF that they call it a freedom weighted index. And so they look at like emerging markets, but they don't weight them in terms of, the size of their economy like most emerging markets indices do. This index looks at freedom with the idea that a country that is more free may appear to have slower economic growth year on year, but it's also less likely to have those major crashes and dips that you see under authoritarian regimes, because those authoritarian regimes can often have major regime change. Like, look at Myanmar / Burma, right? I mean, you have regime change after regime change within a decade. And that kind of thing is a big financial risk despite what appear to be good short-term growth numbers. And so,
well, I think it's a great idea. I'm rather big on the point that in addition to possibly being a better investment bet over time, if those governments that are on higher up the freedom scale are trying to kill you, that ought to be an attraction for an investor as well, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe, but there's always investors like taking risks.
Hope so. Risk with your life is one thing. Risk with your money is another. I'm not sure the first applies.
I mean, I have absolutely, no morality, so I have no moral problem with investing in China. But it's a really bad safety investment.
You wouldn't be associated with this show if you had no morality.
I've been secretly trying to, take money from the Chinese Communist Party for the show, but they refuse to sponsor us. So I've just been doing a very bad job, apparently.
And I hope the rest of the team would refuse to take the money, even if they would.
I've often said I'm totally willing to sell out but no one has ever attempted. I hate it when I do that. But this is a very crucial point because, the Chinese Communist Party has obviously spread a lot of money around. There's been a lot of elite capture. The American people can't depend on the government coming to save you. It really needs to be led by the people.
That's correct.
Campaign.
I mean, I do think that you see if there is enough grassroots type pressure that you can make the government take notice of things that they may rather not do.
Well, and to go back to the South Africa example, that is a case in point. That was not a government-led initiative. My old boss, Ronald Reagan, was in favor of constructive engagement, as he called it, with South Africa and fought tooth and tong to keep going and help the government there evolve over time. The popular sentiment would have none of it. And that's what we need now. No question about it. We have an opportunity, I believe, with young people who now, I think, as then, are very concerned, if not necessarily about all this, financial business or maybe even other aspects of this unrestricted warfare, mostly, I think, because they're simply not aware of it. But they've become pretty familiar, especially in the wake of those Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, with genocide and the oppression of human rights, which, again, I salute you guys for the wonderful work you do to expose it. But especially to the extent you're reaching an audience of younger Americans who feel passionately about human rights, there's a whole nother reason not to be enabling a regime that not only treats its own people so terribly, but aspires to do the same to the rest of us as well. And we ignore that fact, again, at our extreme peril.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with all the slave labor is that, slaves just don't have the eye for quality that we're looking for.
or much of a voice either, for that matter.
Yeah, I like the joke that you make on the show sometimes, Chris, about, well, it's not really a joke as much as it is a pointed commentary on why would you trust a regime that uses rape as a form of torture with your money.
Yeah.
Or among other forms of torture, by the way, and genocidally to boot. And one of the other things, if I could just commend to you all and your audience, is a report that we did, produced by a sort of project of our Committee on the Present Danger China. We call it the Captive Nations Coalition. And I think you may have been talking to my colleague Se-Hun Kim, who works with us. But one of the things what we studied was the extent to which the Chinese are really making huge inroads, as I think I said at the opening, in spreading their model around the world under the guise of this so-called Belt and Road Initiative. And what they've done to the people in East Turkestan, what they've done to the people of Tibet, what they've done to the Southern Mongolians, what they're in the process of doing to the Hong Kongers and aspire to do to the Taiwanese, among others, is now inexorably moving forward in these countries that have become increasingly captive nations through these payday loans and the other arrangements that the Chinese have effected. Again, I'm sure, underwritten at least in part with our money, when they make these financial arrangements that seduce, we talk about elite capture, governments or even populations to get the infrastructure of their dreams from the Chinese, only to find that it turns into Chinese infrastructure, Chinese instruments of control, Chinese social credit system enforced domination, and power projection that will be used to threaten the rest of us. These are the sorts of things that, again, I think the more the public is exposed to it, and at the risk of just shamelessly flogging what you do, I can't thank you enough for not only telling these stories, helping bring this kind of information to a large audience, but doing it with humor, which has an effect that most of us who just treat it very, very seriously, which it is, fail to appreciate is powerful in terms of getting people's attention, getting access to their thinking, and hopefully encouraging them to take action in response. So again, hats off to you all.